Hello everybody and welcome back to my kitchen. I'm going to be making for you today a mole verde with some shrimp. And I really think that this is a recipe you need to know by heart. Even though when you look at the list of ingredients, you'll see that there's quite a few there. But if you think about it as a roasted tomatillo salsa that is then transformed into a mole verde very simply, it's something that you can easily keep in your mind. So I'm going to step you through the making of the roasted tomatillo salsa. Most of you have seen me do this many times in the past, so it won't be something new, but we'll at least establish that as the base of this recipe. I've got some fresh tomatillos that I pulled the papery husks off of, a few slices of onion, some garlic that is still in its papery husk, a serrano chili. If you like it to be spicier, you could put 2 or even 3 of them there. And we're going to roast this, all of this. I like to do this, as I've always said, in Mexico, where stoves all have these large griddles on them. Typically, they would do that on the griddle. I like to do it under a broiler, and so instead of bottom heat, I'm using top heat for that. I'm going to slide this in as close to that preheated broiler as I can get it, and after about 6 minutes or so, I'm going to flip everything over. Everything's got to be deeply roasted. I admit it doesn't look very attractive once you've roasted these tomatillos. They kind of collapse. I am now taking the papery skins off of the garlic. You roast it in the papery skin just because it protects the garlic from burning. And to tell you the truth, I actually pulled these off of this sheet just a couple minutes before before the rest of the stuff was really ready. We got to get rid of the stem on that. And then into our blender jar, we're going to put the garlic and the green chili. You could use, I'm using serrano, you could use jalapeno if that's more to your taste. Put in the onion, and now all of these tomatillos go in there. And the most important part here, you can see all of this beautiful juice. You want to get all of that in there. It is sweet and full of flavor. So I'm just using my fingers to kind of scrape it into there. You want to just make sure that you get all of that juice in there. I'll get rid of this. And now we're going to blend this to make that roasted tomatillo salsa. Now there is a kind of thick salsa and it doesn't have any cilantro in it. You'd probably want to put that in there, maybe thin it out with a little bit of water and season it with some salt, and you have that really classic roasted tomatillo salsa that I absolutely love. Now, if we want to transform this into a mole verde, we thicken it with pumpkin seeds. That's the most important thing. Some cooks also put in sesame seeds, which I really like. So I have toasted pumpkin seeds that are in here. And then we're going to put in the sesame seeds. These are toasted sesame seeds. If you go to the Asian groceries, you can already buy them toasted if you want. Now, most moles have a much more complex spicing. So for this one, I am doing a little bit of black pepper, a little bit of cumin, and a little bit of Mexican oregano. I'm just going to put it into this small molcajete and grind it up. I think that fresh ground spices are an essential part of cooking, because once you grind spices, they lose their flavor really fast. And the other thing to remember is, though this has a little bit of cumin in it, cumin is not a major spice in Mexico. That's more in Southwestern style cooking in the US, to put a lot of cumin in things. Okay, so it's just a small amount of cumin that's going in there. Now, because we've added the sesame and the pumpkin seeds and so forth, I want to reinforce the green chili flavor, but I don't want to make this sauce super hot. So instead of adding more serranos to it, I'm working working with a poblano. I've just roasted this the way you would roast a red bell pepper over an open flame until it got charred on the outside. Then I rubbed all the charred skin off, cut out the seed pod, and rinsed out all the seeds that were in there. And then that's just going to go in there. And the only thing that we have left, again, sort of reinforcing the complexity of a mole, this green mole from central Mexico, is to add herbs. And we have talked about the cilantro that would normally go into a roasted tomatillo salsa. So we're certainly going to put that in there. And if you have it or can locate it or live near a Mexican grocery store that has epazote, I would suggest always putting epazote in this, because that is one of the flavors of central Mexico that is inimitable. It's got its own special flavor, fragrance, all of that. And I find it essential in this, but please, if you can't find it, just put some cilantro in there. It'll be delicious. Now, I'm gonna blend this again for quite some time because I want to blend all of that sesame, which is a hard seed, into this to make it creamy. Okay, so it got stuck a little bit, that things weren't just, there was no vortex. It wasn't pulling everything into the center because this is a fairly thick mixture. So I put a couple tablespoons of water. That's all you have to do. And this is a high-speed blender, so it'll get really, really smooth. But if you don't have a high-speed blender, then you'll just have to let it go for several minutes until it gets as smooth as possible. But I'll show you a little trick a little bit later on. Okay, next thing is we're going to cook this mole verde. I am going to put this pan now over a sort of medium to medium high heat, and I'm going to film the bottom of this with some oil, vegetable oil. I like olive oil flavor in this, especially since I'm going to be doing it with sauteed shrimp. So we've got that nicely filmed there. And then this sort of thick mixture is just going to go in all at once. You should hear that sizzle. I'm going to do my best to scrape out all of this sort of thick puree here into the pan. And then I'm going to just stir it until it darkens a little bit in color, not too dark. And thickens up even a little bit more. This will fuse all of the flavors together. Very classic step in mole making in central Mexico especially. So after a couple minutes of stirring like this over this heat, it'll be ready to thin it out. Now, thinning it out is typically done with some stock. In Mexico, or broth, I should say, because all of the stock is usually something that's much richer. And in central Mexico, or in Mexico in general, most things are cooked with a light broth. So since this is a shrimp dish today, and by the way, you could make this with chicken, you could make this with tofu, you could make it with roasted vegetables, which is one of my favorite things. But since this is made with shrimp, most people would want to put either a light chicken stock in here or a light shellfish stock. But you know what I'm going to encourage you to do is to use water. I just want you to see now what this looks like. It's darkened just a little bit here, and it's thickened up. Its consistency is really that consistency of tomato paste. But it hasn't darkened a lot. If you continue to cook this, it would actually turn a sort of light greenish brown color. But I'm just going to use some water here. Water, I think, is an underrated thinning things for moles because it doesn't overwhelm the flavor of all of this goodness that's in the pan. It actually just delivers it right to you here. So I'm going to pour this water in here, stir it, and then we're going to let this simmer for a few minutes. This mole does not take a long time to get all those flavors together. It's really quite a simple thing, and that's the reason that I said I think it's a recipe you should know by heart. And by the way, I didn't really say this at the beginning, but when I've been in a big hurry, sometimes I get a really high quality tomatillo salsa, and I start with that, and then just blend in the sesame seeds and the pumpkin seeds and the herbs and the spices and so forth, and make my mole verde super fast. So we're all in a time crunch every once in a while, and I would encourage you to think about doing that, because you can turn out something that's very special with a minimal amount of work or time involvement. Okay, so once this has simmered, we'll come back and we'll season it, and then I'm going to quickly saute the shrimp to go with it. Okay, chopping up here a little bit of cilantro. I want it a little bit coarser than what I would normally want for, say, a salsa here. I'm going to add it to the shrimp as they cook there, so we'll just leave that right there. Now on to the seasoning of this mole verde. First thing that I want to do is to taste it to see where the flavors are. Okay, so anything thickened with pumpkin seeds notoriously needs a fair amount of salt. Here I am using diamond crystal salt, so it will look like which has double the volume of regular table salt. So it looks like I'm putting in more than what actually is going in. Stir that up, and then now it's starting to come together. It's just amazing how salt balances flavors. I'm going to put just a touch more in there, and then move this to the back here where I've got a very low fire to keep it warm. Okay, do that. And then I'm going to heat up a wok. You can do this obviously in a large skillet. I just really, really like the consistency of shrimp that are cooked really, really hot in a wok. I think it's the best way to cook shrimp. And again, I'm going to do this in some olive oil because I think that flavor goes really beautifully here, but feel free to use vegetable oil if you would like for this. And so I've got this over high heat now, the way that you would normally stir fry things. And I'm kind of getting to where I need to be heat-wise there. So I'm going to put some olive oil into the wok and then scoop in all of these shrimp. Now these shrimp have been peeled and deveined. I left the tails on because I think that looks really pretty for the presentation. So we'll just slide those guys in there. Make sure that once they go in, that you coat them with the oil and then spread them out. And then I'm just going to slowly toss them, stir fry them here until they have lost the translucency everywhere but the very, very middle. And then I'll take it right off and toss in that cilantro that I chopped. Oh, it smells so good. I love the smell of stir-fried shrimp. I'm going to take the cilantro that I chopped up and toss that in with the shrimp here. And then we're ready to make a beautiful platter out of this. Of course, you could serve this individually too, but I thought I would show you what it looks like to do a platter presentation here. So with a ladle, I will take our mole verde. Now, I think the consistency of it should be like a sort of thickish cream soup. That's what I'm looking for there. So we will ladle that into the well of this platter. There's a little bit more than what we really need for this platter. So you could serve that in a little sauce boat on the side if you wanted to. And then I'm going to put down some of these shrimp in the middle here. Making, look at it, it just looks so beautiful. I like piles of shrimp like this in the middle of a sauce. It's looking really beautiful now. And then last few shrimp over the top. These will have that lovely sort of light crunchy texture because we did them over high heat. A few more of the sesame seeds to go over everything here. And you have a very elegant dish that actually doesn't take very long to make, but you will wow your family and friends with it. I think I'm just gonna go in with a shrimp dipped in this beautiful mole verde to give it a taste. I think you're gonna love it.